you telling me what you think I want to hear because everyone's using the buzzword of curiosity or grit. This is where, as a leader, the show, not the tell, comes through. What you tell me, I listen to. What you show me, I pay attention to. And I think about both of those things combined.
This is Outside Sales Talk, the best podcast for outside salespeople. I'm your host, Steve Benson, and we're here to chat with the world's top sales experts so that you can get their best sales tactics to level up your game. Welcome back to Outside Sales Talk. Today, I've got Amy Volas with us, and we're going to be talking about finding and hiring exceptional sales talent. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. Got a lot to talk about.
We do lot to pick apart here. Just by way of introduction, Amy is a two times entrepreneur who had an enterprise sales career as well, and she's got $100 million in closed revenue under her belt. She's the co-host of the Thursday Night Sales podcast and is a founding member of Sales Hacker. In 2015, she started Avenue Talent Partners, a recruiting firm that helps sales managers recruit the best salespeople for their team. So let's get started. First, the sales field generally has a really pretty high turnover rate. What advice would you give companies who are experiencing high turnover?
So, the reason why turnover happens, there's a lot of different reasons. And a lot of it starts with the hiring process and the fact that I find both parties have a part of the story, right? So, it's not like all companies are horrible or all people are horrible. These are mutual decisions. You agree to go work somewhere and they agree to hire you. And yet, why doesn't it work? And I think sometimes there are bad situations, but a lot of the time, I find that there's a lack of intentionality all the way around the table. So the company hasn't taken the time to really consider and think through the work that needs to be done and what that looks like and why it's important. And then mapping out the hiring profile and then starting the hiring process. It's like, oh, an ideal with startups. So it's like, oh, we got funding, let's just go hire. And it's like, but wait a second, not every company, especially not every startup is created equal. And depending on what stage you are, that work from a sales perspective can look different. I also think that there are different flavors of sales, right? So, enterprise sales is different than mid market, that's different than channel, that's different than SMB, that's different than, um, you know, then you get into sales leadership, then you get into different kinds of enterprise altogether. You could have global, you could have jumbo, you could have major, you could have, like it's like, and on and on and on and on. And so when I think about all those different variations, if you are not a salesperson by trade, or you've just been in one kind of sales motion, let's say you come from SMB and you've been promoted and you've done a great job, which is lovely, but now it's time to build out an enterprise sales team or a field sales team. That looks and feels and acts differently. How you motivate, how you incentivize, the things that you hire for, the work that needs to be done, the sales journey, who's involved, all of that is different, and it's not a one size fits all, and what worked well over here might not work well in this new place over here. And so I think when it comes to bridging that gap a little bit, it's really important for companies to be intentional to figure out the true work and to stay true to that and to be honest. I think so many people feel like I need to sell this candidate on why they should work here, and it's like, no, you just need to be honest with them. Because if you are, and what's important to you and why you're doing it and what that looks like strikes a chord with them, great. Keep talking. If it doesn't, save yourself some time and a lot of heartache later. It's not
Yeah,
just a one-sided thing.
I really could not agree anymore. I mean, it's so important to be transparent on both sides about, well, and this is in business or any kind of relationship, right? I mean, if you're transparent, you don't want to quote unquote lie on your dating profile with people that you're hiring or vice versa, because you want to make sure that people understand what kind of organization they're joining, and then they're likely to, if they know that on the way in, then they're likely to stay a long time and have it be a good fit. And because if it's not, and you really want that as a business, because it takes so long to scale up a sales rep and get them actually productive and good in the organization. And if they leave after a year and a half because it really wasn't a good fit from the beginning, then you've really wasted a lot of time, wasted a lot of good leads, and wasted a lot of good relationships that your organization has made with prospective customers.
Well, you're going to find out one way or the other. It is like dating, right? You're going to find out if um, if I'm wearing a wig and I have a bunch of fake things to make me look different. What happens in 6 months when I wake up in the morning and all that is not there? You're going to see the real person ultimately at some point. It's
Yeah.
also important to hold the salesperson accountable or the sales leader accountable. You have a place in this story as well. So when you get caught up in the blame game and you're churning every 14, 16, 18 months, and you're wondering why you can't get the cherry roll, job hopping is a problem for employers. I don't care what people say. It's true. I deal with employers every day all day long. It raises up a flag. And even if the reasons make sense, it still raises up a flag. So why not break your own cycle to take care of yourself, to show up for yourself, to make a good decision? And I find that most people, when the market is heated way back up, people window shop. Like, I'm just going to collect a bunch of offers and then I'm going to go for where the money is. And I'll tell you right now, when people just go for the money, it's a risky proposition because you haven't quantified or qualified if all the other bits and pieces make sense. So, if product market or service market fit isn't there, if leadership is a hot mess, if there isn't really an opportunity for you to have a good territory, if there is an opportunity for you to continue to grow depending on what's important to you, if you haven't dug into that to take care of yourself, to make a good, well informed decision, that's on you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's such a red flag when someone's been at, four companies in the last 5 years, and immediately your thought is, well, how long are they going to be with us? I mean, I when I hire someone, I want them to be with us for a decade, right? Like, I want to provide an environment where they can be really successful and develop their career and take the next steps, and you know, um, and I think that the value in those in business relationships is it comes from the long term. So I think it's a huge red flag, and I think that a key to it really does accelerate your career if you can find a great spot that you can be at for a long time and get leadership experience there, really get good in the role because you've been there for a while. And frankly, a lot of times the most money is made that way because over time you learn where the best territories are, you get kind of residual customers, you build trust with the management team that they want you to take care of the best customers and sell into the best customers because you've got seniority, and so you get bigger deals. I remember my first sales jobs. The territories seemed so unfair because even though they were the same size, the people who had been there for 5 years, they got they had cherry picked all the good accounts. So the account lists were the same length, but the good accounts were all on the list of the people that have been there forever.
I mean, the best time I made the most money or I had the most success was when I was early on. I did the hard work. I earned the right to cherry pick.
Hmm.
Right. And um, so I'm really troubled by the stories we start to tell ourselves and the justification and the victim entitlement that happens with these decisions, where it's like, this is a life decision. This is a career decision. This is where you spend a lot of time. Why are you taking a backseat approach to it? And I know the tone of my voice is stern. I care an awful lot about our sales ecosystem. It's why I'm here with you to talk about the real of the situation. But here's the thing. Make no mistake, people, there are no shortcuts to sustainable success. You have to do the work every day with the right people. You have to think about your pipeline. You have to think about your customer. There's no hacking this. Same thing with your career. You have to show up for yourself. And if you're making not the right decisions for your career and you're churning every year and you want to be an enterprise, guess what? The party just gets started after year one. Year one's the build year. You're never going to make as much money. You're always going to leave something behind because of it, it should be what you're going to, and what you're going to helps you get better and helps grow your career. And if you can't really answer that or you're not sure, I don't know if that's the best opportunity for you. And so, these are the critical things. So many people get caught up like, I'm just going to make a move for 10K extra. Well, in 3 months, when your territory sucks and it's a horrible team and there isn't product market fit, and you got seduced because you were afraid to ask the tough questions, or you were like, well, I went to Google and I typed in What interview questions should I ask? And I looked at Sales Hackers article and I asked those. If those don't mean anything to you, you didn't figure out that's what the interview process is for. It is a two-way street. And if you can't get your questions answered, maybe not the right place, maybe a bad place. But that is why you have a seat at that table as well, is to peel back the layers to understand what is the task at hand, what's really happening. People get caught up like, oh, they told me the top performer made $1 million last year. Really? How sustainable was that? And the next performer after that, where are they? And what did it take? What did that work actually look like? And how are you planning on changing that quota? How often does the quota change? These are questions to ask. And yes, your tone of voice, and it's about how you ask it, when you ask it. But these are the things that make up good decisions. What doesn't make up a good decision is when you assume or you get caught up in the shiny objects. So I know I'm coming in hot, but I really just it really troubles me when people struggle and they're so caught up in these things and they wonder why it's not clicking. This is why.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Another great question that jumps out to me you can ask is actually not to the hiring manager because they might not give you a straight answer, but a lot of times you do get a chance to get interviewed by or at least network with other reps is ask another rep on the team that you're getting hired onto, well, what percentage of the team is making their number? Because I've seen teams, I mean, obviously, teams want to managers want to manage it so that 70% of their team makes their number and 30% misses, but I've seen teams where 80% of the team is missing their number. That's not a team you want to join because that means the number's too high or the product's not saleable or there's some kind of issue there. um,
Well, one step further, can I talk to a couple of those people? And then when you talk to them, how long did it take you? What did you do? Like how sustainable is this? What did that look like? Like talk to them person to person like, "Hey, this is a big decision. I'd love to hear how you got to the top 1% of this team.
mhm.
And how long have you been here? And how long do you expect to stay? What does your pipeline look like? How long did it take you? What are the biggest obstacles?" And not the manufactured questions, but like, this is what I heard in the interview that they said the biggest obstacle was, what's yours? And it can't be the same one. That's
Mhm.
how you, so like, here's the, I don't know, is this going to be visual? Do people get to see? Or is it
Yeah,
just us?
most people are just listening, but you can describe things, and we do put it on YouTube as well, so they can see it there. But certainly, just describe what you're doing. Because a lot of people are in their cars while they're listening here.
So thank you for driving with us. 10 and 2, buckle up, drive safe. Don't text and drive, all the disclaimers, but, like, my hand is up and
Mhm.
I'm drawing sort of a line. This is the surface. All of the magic is below. And
Yeah.
it's our responsibility to ourselves to figure out how to dig below. Look, it's the same thing as your biggest sales meeting. This is your biggest sales meeting because it's your life. It's how you make your money. It's how you live your life. It's the catalyst for your career. The best sales meetings are when we seek to understand, not assume. And it's not just one discovery call and you're done and you figure it all out. Every call that we have with our buyers should be to understand, to confirm, reconfirm, figure it out, deny. It's okay. Are we not doing that for ourselves?
Well, and we've talked a lot about what a sales rep can do to evaluate whether this is a good position for them or not. Um, and that's so important for a rep to make sure this is the right kind of company they're joining. It's the right fit for them. It's the right kind of team. It's a good situation, good territory, etc. What about on the other hand, from in your in your expertise here, how can managers looking to make hires and really find those ideal sales candidates and figure out what the company needs? What should they be thinking about as they build that higher profile that they're looking for?
It all should map back to the work that needs to be done. And this is where I hold leaders accountable to, when was the last time you stepped outside of the spreadsheet and you spent time with your team? What does, and forget about listening to the gong calls or the chorus calls. When did you get close to the action? I mean, look, we're in a digital world right now with COVID, more so than we've ever been. But are you spending time with your reps? Are you spending time on calls with them, not just listening to snippets of calls that you can find out word usage and just listen to that? I'm talking about being there. I'm talking about in your stand-ups, talking through where are you really struggling? Where do you need help? What are clients really liking? What are we hearing out there? Not what's going to close this week. Don't spend that valuable time on stuff that you can see in your dashboard. Figure out the context of the dashboard. Guess what? When was the last time you spent time with your buyers? When did you take your top 50 buyers as a leader and spend time with them to say, why did you buy with us? Why do you stay with us? What's missing? What would you like to have? And not relying on your sales team to translate that. That's how you show up as a leader so that then, wow, you know what? I've got to hire. It's really cool to understand firsthand what it takes to be successful in this role. And then you map that out. And it's not just, I need to hire an AE. The world that we live in is really segmented. I am not for it. I came from full cycle. I'm here for it all day, every day. I'm hoping that that comes back and then some. We've fooled ourselves into thinking that it's oh so efficient to split up sales, a BDR to an AE to a this to a that to the other thing. A, our buyers hate it. And B, we're making salespeople worse. We're not teaching people how to have business discussions. So, as sales leaders, looking at the dashboard from what the SDR is doing to now what the AEs are doing to now what this is doing, like you don't see the full picture, you see choppiness and you're not looking at the right metrics in a lot of the instances. I want to know, guess what? You get a lead that comes in or an SDR is setting up a meeting and they don't show. You don't look at that. You look at uh, what deals have closed or what opportunities are happening. You're not paying attention to what's happening at the buyer and you're losing them at the top of the funnel because you're not listening to them, because you're putting them in your motion because it's efficient. Well, no, it's not if you're losing a bunch of people because you're turning them off because you can't meet them where they are. These are the things that I want leaders to think about, right? Like what makes sense for your business. Sometimes SDRs do make sense, sometimes they don't. What I do think makes sense is when we can have a conversation with our buyer that in any context, if it's bigger than us, you know what, that's great. Let me pull in the right person, but I'm going to be the common thread through this whole thing. Ultimately, people want to be seen, heard, and understood. Our team members that report to us, our buyers that buy things from us, our co executives that are leading based on what's happening on the sales floor. That's good leadership. When you stop and you think about that and then remind yourself, not all A's are created equal. Just because this person over here went to President's Club doesn't mean that they're good for me. To your point, what happens if I try to hire the person that's been at the company for 5 years and they stepped into somebody else's territory that was prime for the picking? They didn't do any of the building, they just stepped in. Or what happens if it's that same company? It's the person that over the last 5 years built that. Two very different people, but they both went to President's Club. One wants to build, probably one doesn't. Which one do you hire? Well, if I need a builder, I know which one I want to hire. If I don't, and I want more of a maintainer, I know which one I want to hire. It's that thought process to know. And I find that most people don't speak sales fluently. I do. That's why I started my company. I know how to take somebody through emotion to be like, okay, so let's talk about this. Are you living the high life of having leads just thrown at you and you can't keep up and that's your job? How much of your time is spent on prospecting? These are the things to think about. And as a leader, as I'm defining the hiring, sort of profile, these are the things that I want to think about. Right. And if it's like, oh, well, we're just building an outbound team for the first time. Do you know how long it takes before you see repeatable results? And the answer to that is no. Well, what if I think that it takes a month and we're an enterprise and it takes 6 months to even see any traction? And now I'm hiring people and I'm telling them it takes a month and they make a big career decision and it takes six. You've got pissed off people.
Absolutely, and that's not the way you want to start a relationship with employees, right? I mean,
No.
and
I
so
mean, it's
much
not
this
the way I
is
want to, right?
right, exactly, and so much of this is based on where you're at and who you sell to. I mean, I think there's no one size fits all for how to design a sales team and what is the ideal hire profile, which is a good thing because then everyone will be looking for the same exact people on the hiring side, right?
Exactly.
What when you're looking at a resume, what jumps out at you? Like what keywords do you look for? What structures are you seeing? I mean, you've obviously looked at a million resumes. What is the what are you looking for in a resume? And then let's talk about the interview process that you like to use to determine if a candidate is going to be a good fit for the company.
Um, I'm going to use your same words back at you. This isn't a one size fits all. And so the work that I do, I am on the listing agent side, not the buying agent side. So I represent the company, and all the things that I look at are driven by the task at hand. So what I will say is synonymous about what captures my interest or my eye is when it's very easy to understand what somebody is doing. So when you're trying to say like I'm a sales ninja, that turns me off. Like cut it out and just tell me what you're doing. Like don't be cute. The sales ninja, what is that, enterprise? Is that mid-market? What is that? And I think when you're on LinkedIn, for example, you want to be careful about being magnetic to your buyer, but also potentially being magnetic to somebody that might want to hire you. So tell me about, this is why people take action, me included. You can help my clients solve problems, reach goals, get better, because that's what you're going to do for their buyers. So take me on that journey. How are you solving problems? How are you reaching goals? How are you getting better? Um, I want specifics. I don't want to read jargon. Telling me about synergy and partnership and connection and relationship and the KPI to this, get specific. So I really like it when I recruit VP plus for sales and CS. And the only individual contribution role I recruit for is the heavy duty enterprise 150K plus base. Like that's the real. Everything else I don't deal with. I want to know specifics. I want you to make it easy for me. Remember, our digital footprints are merely invitations for conversations, a variety of them. It's not always about getting a job. It's not always about doing business. It could be networking, it could be a friendship, it could be, I mean, so many different things, right? Make it easy to understand. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, it's really easy to understand what I'm really good at and what I've done. You
Mhm.
don't need a legend because I'm writing in hieroglyphics to try to figure it out. I'm not speaking in jargon. I'm very clear about what I like to do, about where I spend my time and what I'm good at. Do that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what do you think are some of the areas that could be important for one company and not be as important for another company? Like, how do you, if you're, I think sometimes managers don't even, when they're building a team or growing a team or even maintaining a team, they don't look for the right types of characteristics that are going to be a good fit for them at a given time. What do you think about some of those characteristics and how do you figure out what's important to you?
You've got the skill and the will, right? So, like, I think about the skill, and the skill, in my opinion, is the easy part. The will is the hard part because the will is, you can't teach somebody to care. You either care or you don't. And so, in my mind, it's like, well, what does that look like in practice? What do I need to think about? People use the word curiosity. I'm all for that word. I look for that, and not that you're telling me I'm curious. I read a lot of books. You know how it's really easy to figure that out? Well, which books have you read in the last 30 days? I had this person tell me I read 100 books in the last 3 months. I'm like, that's a lot of books.
That's a lot of books.
I'm like, tell me
Do you have a
tell me
job?
about, yeah, exactly. No, no, he did not. Um, and I said, so tell me about your 5 favorite books. He could only talk about 1. It was bullshit. Pardon my
Ah,
French,
okay.
but like, like, so you telling me what you think I want to hear because everyone's using the buzzword of curiosity or grit. This is where, as a leader, the show, not the tell, comes through. What you tell me, I listen to. What you show me, I pay attention to. And I think about both of those things combined. So, um, how somebody shows up, are they genuinely gracious? Even if you're having a tough conversation, are people getting defensive? Are people shutting down? Are people not able to get specific after the interview? Are people sending thank yous? If they are, is it the thank you that they ripped off of a Slack community of this is how you thank somebody after an interview? Or are you showing me that you heard what we talked about and the things that stood out and how you can map back to that because you're really excited? See the difference? Such a difference. Your preparation. It's really easy to see when people wing it versus when people are genuinely excited. And here's what I'll say to anybody that's listening to this in their car or anywhere else for that matter. um, don't waste your time. If you're not genuinely interested or compelled or curious about a role, don't just go through the motions. You're wasting your time, you're wasting their time. Don't do that because you know what? It'll show. You never know when your paths cross again. And you don't want a door permanently closed because you showed up badly. And that is on you.
And when you're being interviewed, and then we'll flip it, and when we'll talk about when you're interviewing, but when you're being interviewed, how can you show these key characteristics of people that you know people are looking for? How can you display that you have grit? How can you work in that you're a curious rep who really gets to know customers and wants to understand their business? How do you show a hiring manager that?
It's how you connect the dots, meaning, so how do you show grit? That's the power of storytelling. And you better know your stuff like the back of your hand. So how you show grit, when I interviewed, for example, I love the thrill of a build. I love it. Like, give me something that nobody else has done and let me put my paw prints all over it. And here's how I would approach it. So, you're not going to hear anything from me for the first 30 days because I got to get my backyard cleaned up. I'm a type A kind of gal that needs to prioritize my time. So, in Salesforce, this is what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to think about, see how I'm not relying on anybody to do it for me. I'm not being like, where's my sales ops person? I'm like, this is what I need, and this is how I can build, and this is how I have grit to not need my hand held. That's the power of storytelling to know it like the back of the hand. And by the way, I'm not going to finish the rest of that story because I don't want people that are listening to just like read, rinse, and repeat. That is absolutely an authentic part of my story. That is absolutely how I approach that conversation of I have been in big companies and I have been in small companies and I've thrived in both. I'm a very unique person that can be ambidextrous. My best work is when I'm at a small startup or when I'm building something from scratch. So, for example, when I went to Indeed, I was employee number 20 something. There were no other enterprise salespeople. I was remote. That was a guinea pig. It was very scary for everybody. This is what I did. And as a result, I had a 12 state territory and I was there through $1.5 billion exit.
And if you're the interviewing manager, how do you tease out these characteristics that you've determined are really important for success at your organization? Let's just say you've determined grit and curiosity are super important for you. How do you tease out as an interviewer whether this person really has the characteristics that you're looking for and isn't just kind of making things up or just spinning yarn for you?
You get as close to the practice of things and less theory. So the whole behavioral, tell me about a time when you did this. Do you know how easy it is to prepare for that? And I don't like playing games with people of like catch them off guard and play a, trick on them to see how they might do because that's what sales is. No, no. But what I really care about is know what the work looks like, know what the challenges are, know what you're facing in this role is going to face, and talk about it and simulate it. Get as close to the work. And what I mean by simulation is not a presentation where it's like you can present whether it's your own thing that you do or something else or what we do. I just want to see how you present. There are people that are really good presenters that are horrible sellers, right? So, like, get as close to the work to see what it would really be like as possible. And I want to go back because I didn't answer the second part of your last question of how do you look for curiosity?
Mhm.
You look to see how they're listening to you, how they're absorbing what you're talking about and the questions that they ask as a result. For anybody that's a seller, make your questions count because you're showing up to the conversation to have a real conversation to understand like you would with your buyer. This isn't about having 50 prefab questions that you rip off of the internet. It's making notes. It's if you're on Zoom saying, you know what, I might not look you in the eye. I'm going to be over here making notes because this is really important for me. And then when they say, what questions do you have? You could say, you know what, about 20 minutes ago, you mentioned the fact that someone on the team had doubled in revenue and everybody else has basically been like 40%. Can we talk about what that looked like to double in revenue and why the rest of the team isn't there? And is that your expectation of me? Do you know how amazing that is? I'm showing that I'm curious. Like, I want to genuinely know. So, your questions shouldn't be questions that you could ask any random company. When do you want this role filled by? Well, guess what? Anybody listening, newsflash, everybody wants their role filled by yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah,
So, like,
exactly.
that's a stupid question. And I do agree there are such things as stupid questions. That's one of them.
For
Like,
sure.
a good question is you show up, you listen, you make note, and the things that you're making note that you're like, whoa, I've really got to get this, star it, right? It's okay to show up to an interview and say, I'm really excited about this. I've got a notebook full of things. Pardon me if I refer back to it. I just want to make sure like we really maximize our time together. A hiring manager is not going to be like, no, you suck. And if they are, do you really want to work with them? And on the flip side, if you did that with a buyer, how much are they going to love you? Like, wait, you came prepared. You were thinking about this. You're paying attention to what's happening in our industry. You're trying to be helpful. That's that's the like secret sauce right there.
Absolutely, I love it. And one strategy on the interviewing side that I've used, I've probably have less advice to give on the being interviewed side, but well, one thing that I've done on the interviewing side to really tease out if someone really knows what they're talking about, and how, because it's easier for people to say, oh, I ran this project doing this, or I was a part of, when really they were just a part of it, or it was, a small part of their job, not a big part. What I'll do is I'll bring up like a, oh, like, tell me a project that you're particularly proud of at your last role, and then I'll keep asking questions to go deeper and deeper. And, oh, what did that process look like? And, oh, who else was involved in that? And who helped me? Who else was involved in that particular decision? What was the process that you came to that? And as you poke deeper and deeper, if they really were, a key person on this given project, or running it, they'll be able to speak to all the nuances. Whereas if their involvement was more tangential, they won't be able to go as deep.
Totally agree. Drop your mic right now.
Boom.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
so what about when you're making hires? How do you ensure that you're hiring the most qualified salespeople who are going to be a really good fit for your company?
You use a hiring scorecard.
And what does that look like to you?
Well, you can go to Google and you can say www .google.com and type, and I'm not being cute, but I literally have written about this ad nauseum with a
Hmm.
full on methodology and a free download. And there's two: one, when you're looking for a job, and two, when you are hiring. So I wrote a series, two parts. It's on Sales Hacker,
Hmm.
and both things. So, like, if you're looking, how to think about it, some questions to think about, how to prepare, what to do in the scorecard. There's a scorecard for you. Same thing on the hiring side. That is truly my best advice. And that could be a podcast in and of itself. So, please, if you look that up, you will be able to find it. And all of that awaits.
And why is a hiring scorecard so important? Tell me about why should someone use one?
It takes the emotion out. So, like dating. So, I'm going to use your analogy because there are so many similarities when it comes to dating and the work career hiring decisions that we make.
Hmm.
It's super easy to get seduced, right? Like, let's say you got on a date with somebody and they're really attractive, and you're like, whoa, they look even better than when I swiped right. They're really, really attractive. And you have a couple of drinks and you're a little bit loose in the conversation in terms of like, I'm just getting caught up in how attractive they are. And we're having fun and we're talking about travel. And I like to travel and this is cool. And you know what? I want to spend more time with them because we've got chemistry. And in my gut, it feels really good. How many times in an interview, hiring side or interview side, it's like, I'll know what good looks like. It's in my gut. I need to have that good chemistry. Really? Okay, well, what about all the other things? Flash forward now, it's 10 dates ahead, and you find out said person has 15 credit cards that are maxed. They live in their uncle's basement. They borrowed a car from a friend because their license got revoked because they had a DUI, and they haven't had a job in 3 years. Now, maybe that's somebody's ideal life mate, not mine. right? But maybe you're going to always find out one way or the other that what the hiring scorecard does is it removes that ability to be seduced and it keeps you tethered to the bits and pieces when you're, remember how I talked about being intentional? Right? So being intentional if you're looking or being intentional if you're hiring. And even if you're not looking and you're interviewing, you should be doing this to make sure the grass isn't always greener on the other side, my friends. So this takes out that emotion and where this all came from. I did not create the concept of a scorecard. This has been well before my time. I created my version of the methodology and it came from when I took a move just for the money. It was a 50K bump in my base and I already had a really good base. I went straight for the money. I had flown to where they were. I knew in my heart of hearts that these three people that were really pivotal to my day to day, I didn't jive. I didn't really like them. I didn't agree with what they were saying, but I pushed it away because I really liked who my manager would be. Well, what I didn't realize was that my manager had no authority. Day one, and I'm not a crier. I call my husband up and I'm bawling. And I'm like, what did I just get myself into? And we all know that feeling when you make a bad decision like that, and now you feel stuck and helpless and scared and defeated. I don't like feeling that way. Those are all emotions that I don't ever want to feel again. That's when I figured out the power of a scorecard. And I was like, I never want to do this again to myself. I'm taking accountability. This was my decision as well. Yes, these are the broken things, but how do I learn from this to get better? And so that's where the scorecard came up of like, forget about the stories I start telling myself about being seduced. How many times you talk to somebody like, no, 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 but this is a really good opportunity. And you can see how bad it is in this one place. And they're like, no, 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 but they told me. And it's like, but did you ask? And then they look at you and they're like, no. Scorecard makes sure that you ask about every single thing that's important to you and that you can use your existing role as a baseline or your former roles as a baseline to make sure that what you're going to helps you, not hurts you. So it takes that emotion out and it helps you keep yourself anchored to the bits and pieces when all of our bits and pieces are different, but what makes sense for you to get to yes. That's why I'm so passionate about that. And same thing if you're hiring.
Right. I mean, and really, when you zoom back, same thing about most hard decisions in life. You kind of have to look at, well, what are the really important things to me here, given the different outcomes of these different decisions or choices, and how do I weight them relative to one another? Are two of these variables 80% of what I care about, and the other 10 variables, 2% each? Or are they all kind of equal? But I think you having a scorecard where where you actually rate things and then determine how important that element is for any hard decision, I think is it can be really helpful. But on the hiring side, where do you think are the best places to source quality sales talent? Where do you look for it? How do you meet them? Where do you source it?
There isn't a one universal answer. It depends. And it maps back to a lot of different factors that you need to suss out when you're thinking about the work that needs to be done and the space that you're in. And, how important is domain? How important is experience? So that's a hard question to answer. It just really depends.
And tell me, I've heard about your people-centric and
Mhm.
process-driven approach to hiring. Could you tell me more about that?
The bots have not taken over. And so until they do, this is very much a people driven world that we live in. Sales is about people doing things with other people. Recruiting is about people doing things with other people. And until that changes and until people go away, which that's probably not going to happen in my lifetime. Um, yes, we live in the digital age. Yes, there's automation. Yes, there are tools that help us, but a lot of that also hurts us. And so I'm here to kind of bring it back full circle of what's old is new. Relationships still matter. People still matter. I want to show people you can be wildly successful without being a dirtbag or cutting corners or treating people poorly. So that's what I mean by people centric is my candidates are just as important as my clients. My clients are just as important as my candidates and I serve them both. And I care about candidate experience. I care about client experience. I care about communication. I care about accountability. I care about ownership. I care about transparency. These are all really big jargony words, but that is backed up in action in my world. So that's step one of people centric. And then I have a framework and a process right behind it to back that up.
And what would you say is the most challenging part of hiring new sales talent?
They're people, and people can change their mind and they can lie, and different things can happen, and not all people are created equal, and it's not like writing a piece of code. It's not like buying a product off a shelf. This product that we hire, that we try to hire, that we work with, that sells something, that buys something, they have lots of different things happening in their minds that maybe they tell you, maybe they don't tell you, maybe they don't even realize yet. That's the tricky part, and it's also the fun part.
Absolutely. What advice would you give a hiring manager giving interviews and going through this dating process with a new sales candidate? What would you recommend they do to overcome some of these tough challenges?
I've been talking about this a lot. You take a page out of the real world's book. So when I was a junior in high school, the real world came out, and that tagline, like, totally has stuck with me through the years. Stop being polite and start getting real. Now, does that mean that you throw your manners out the window and you act like a jerk? No. What I'm suggesting is that you have real discussion. Stop it with we're going to ask these 50 behavioral based interview questions. I'm going to make somebody go through a million different hoops. Be intentional, understand why you're asking what you're asking, what about that matters, uh, the people that are involved in the hiring process, why they're involved, why that matters. Be intentional, be upfront, be honest. People want to be shot straight. Um, and in turn, they're going to shoot you straight, right? Like attracts like. So the games of, like, I'm running a sweatshop, but I'm going to make it sound like it's like Disneyland. That's ridiculous because, like we said before, if you're trying to manufacture a story that isn't true and you're not being honest about the reality of the situation, people are going to find out one way or the other, and it's going to cost you a lot of money if you're losing people. To lose
Absolutely.
somebody on the sales team or a sales leader, seven-figure problem. You compound that by doing that on the regular, you've got a really big, gnarly problem that doesn't just go away because you hire somebody to replace them. These
Well,
are
help
compounding
that's a big statement. Walk through that. Help walk through help a hiring manager understand why a mistake here is a seven-figure problem. Because I bet if you asked a lot of hiring managers, hey, what does a bad hire cost you? They'd be like, well, I mean, I would have paid him his base of, I would have paid 70 grand over the year, and so bad hire cost 70 grand. What is it real? Talk through how you came to a seven-figure problem.
Well, let's break it down. How long did it take you to hire the person? Time is money. And when that person isn't hired, that's missed opportunity. How do you quantify that? When the person is hired and they're not productive, that's more time. If the person, it's not just their salary, you pay their benefits. If they have an expense account, you pay their expense account. If you have them set up in an office, you pay for them to breathe in that office. When it doesn't work out, what if it doesn't work out? And then there's legal terms that you have to deal with. You pay for that. You pay for commission. You pay for opportunity cost. You pay for the buyer experience, meaning if they aren't doing their work or it doesn't go well with the buyer and that buyer gets turned off, you've lost that opportunity. See how that compounds? It's not just,
Hmm.
oh, it's my base salary. No, no. There's a lot of other costs that you can't necessarily see or feel right away, but it's the stuff that haunts you. And by the way, if we're talking about enterprise sales, you do this enough, you only get one shot at the enterprise table. You hire wrong and that person acts like a fool. Good luck.
Absolutely. Well, the next section is sales in 60 seconds. So quick questions, quick answers.
Yeah.
First question: what's the biggest mistake companies make when hiring new sales talent?
They don't onboard them or support them. They just throw them to the wolves. The cream will rise to the top.
And how can companies incentivize their sales leaders to stick around for a longer time?
You have a very intentional cards face up on the table uh, hiring process, and you talk about expectations and you mutually agree what that looks like, and you figure out what you need and the work that needs to be done, that this person actually is here for it and that they can do it to back it up.
Yeah, transparency is so important there.
Well, I'm not assuming that every VP of sales is created equal. There's 48 different kinds of them in tech. So get it right.
Right. Um, what are your thoughts on hiring a candidate based on merit versus cultural fit?
Well, it depends on what I'm compromising, right? So I don't know what cultural fit means. That's a really big statement that people throw out. And I'm like, well, how do you define it? And people really struggle with that. It depends on what we're compromising on. If it's something really big that has to do with culture, like we are a culture of accountability and that person can't be accountable, not doing it. Right. So it just depends. That's a big old depends.
What's your number one piece of advice for companies who are looking to hire some new sales talent right now?
Remember that these are people. And if it's new sales talent, that doesn't just mean that it's a body that you put in a seat. All the things that we talked about wrapped up in a nice bow: intentionality, thoughtfulness, having a plan, coming prepared, realizing that what you put in is what you get out. And after the hire is made, the party's just getting started.
If you were going to recommend as an actionable takeaway, what do you think that sales managers who are listening today, what is the first thing they should do to start hiring the right salespeople for their team better?
It starts with the people, get to them and figure it out.
I'm going to try to summarize what Amy's talked about here today because so many people are in the car while they listen to this. So, first of all, companies have a high turnover rate due to challenges in the hiring process. That's where Amy points the finger to turnover rate. So instead, during the hiring process, companies need to think through the work that they truly want done by the person they're hiring, what the ideal hiring profile is, and how they will go about sourcing and finding this candidate. Companies and salespeople need to be transparent about what they can offer. And companies also need to make an ideal hiring profile that maps back to the work that they want done. So sales leaders should get in front of their customers in the field. So if you're a manager, be out in the field with your reps, really learning what you need to what characteristics are going to make that ideal hire profile. And then you can once you have gathered that information, you can look for it in a candidate and put it into your hiring process. Sales leaders should also talk to their top customers to see what they're looking for in salespeople. What's important? Is it the expertise? Is it that they buy them steak dinners? Figure out what's important. On the being hired side for the candidate, be clear on your resume and LinkedIn about what your experience is and what you're really good at. What type of rep are you? What type of rep do you want to be? And what exact what where are your strengths? So make sure that you include information about how you as a salesperson are able to solve problems, how you reach goals and examples of that in the past, and how you improve yourself and work to get better and sharpen the sword. Amy encourages sales leaders to look for the skill and the will in candidates. During the interview, pay attention to what skills salespeople highlight about themselves and how they show you their curiosity. Amy really recommends using a hiring scorecard to get yourself into the right sales job or to get yourself the right candidate. Both sides need to really think about what characteristics and attributes are important to them and at what weight compared to other characteristics and attributes in a candidate or a role. You can always check out Amy's scorecards that she's made on Sales Hacker. She's made those resources available, and we'll put those in the links below. A hiring scorecard is great because it really takes the emotion out of the sales hiring process. Sales managers should be intentional and real with their hiring process to make sure they get the best candidates for the role. So be realistic, be honest with yourself. Well, this has been just fantastic. Amy, tell me, where can our listeners read more about your work? How can they reach out to you?
I'm easy to find. I think I'm the only Amy Volas that's swirling around in our ecosystem. So avenuetalentpartners.com is my website. Thursday night sales is where I hang out every Thursday, and people can come for an open ask us anything conversation. And LinkedIn, Amy Volas.
Well, this has been a great episode of the Outside Sales Talk. If you work in field sales, you'll love Badger Maps, the number one route planner that helps you sell 20% more and drive 20% less. You can get a free trial at badgermapping.com. If anyone can think of any other sales reps or sales managers that would benefit from learning the skills of around hiring and recruiting that Amy's talked about today, definitely forward this episode on to them. And take care. Take care until next time, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hope this was helpful.